was just a normal day, just a sunshiny, cool March 2nd day, you know, and I was cleaning and doing and just piddling around the house, doing this, that, and the other. And I spilt some Diet Coke. And so I was trying to take this hand to wipe up that Diet Coke, and this arm and hand wouldn't work. And so my husband, for some reason, didn't go to his prayer breakfast, his church prayer breakfast that day. And he was at home, and so I walked in the kitchen where he was standing.
She was kind of out of it, to be honest with you. And she said, I can't get this Coke wiped up, but she couldn't move her hand, you know. So I looked at her, and I could see that her face had begun to droop, and I said, well, I know what's wrong with you. We got to go to the hospital right now.
It was a Saturday afternoon. My wife and I we were just sitting around watching television. I was playing with my phone, and a lot of the lettering, a lot of the letters on my phone, just everything was jumbled together and nothing made any sense. And I was, whatever this is, put my phone down. My hand was completely useless. I was trying to put my phone on the charger. My hand didn't work. It's one thing that I didn't know is when you have a stroke, I had no idea. Even though my hand didn't work and I couldn't read, it just didn't make any sense to me. My wife looked over and said, "What are you doing?" And she said, she saw my face had drooped, and she's like, "You've had a stroke." And she called 911. I said, "No, I'm fine." And I tried to stand up and I fell.
I went to the kitchen, I just drank instant coffee, made myself a cup of coffee. I went to my recliner, sat down with my coffee, turned the TV on, was watching the news, and then my cell phone went off. I had a text message. So I picked that up with my left hand, and when I looked at that, it was like I did not know what to do with it. I got up out of my recliner, went to the bedroom, and Danny was up. But the minute he seen me, he said, "Oh, Mom," he said, "you've had a stroke, and we have got to get you to the emergency room."
I went into the living room, and he was seated in his recliner and was trying to operate the button on the side, but he couldn't get it to function right. And I asked him, I said, "You know, Dad, what's wrong with you?" And he couldn't talk. I saw a little bit of droopiness. I saw, you know, a little bit of saliva coming down one side. And so I looked at his pupils and I said, "Dad, you're having a stroke."
I didn't know I was having a stroke, but my wife and son told me he thought I was having a stroke. I could not really talk. I just made a sound to me like a calf talk.
I've been in EMS for 7 years now. I love my job. It's around 3:38 actually is the last time I looked at my phone. I was standing outside dispatch smoking. I talked to the dispatcher and told her I'm gonna lay down, and because I needed to be up at 5:30 to wash the truck, and I went in. I thought I was gonna get up. Anyway, I sat down and got real dizzy, and I was like, "Whew, Lord, I'm fat." And I started swaying, and I got real short of breath, and I saw these sunflower seeds, and I was like, "Man, those look really good." So when I picked them up and went to reach for them, my arm wouldn't work.
I was not feeling well because of a headache, and went and slept till dinner, and I woke up, had some dinner, and one of my dogs was out walking. I just let him back in. That's when my left side gave out.
We got in the car and we come to Paragould, Arkansas Methodist, so they took me in and they done a CT of the brain. Then they brought me to my room, and Christy Faust was my nurse. She began to ask me questions, and I knew all the answers, just could not respond because I couldn't speak.
Then we go through this whole process of doing the NIH stroke scale, and he was completely unable to do that, especially on the left side, and of course with his expressive aphasia, he wasn't able to answer any of the questions. He wasn't able to read any of the sentences or talk about any of the pictures.
The only deficit that I really had was not able to, I had right arm weakness and unable to speak. I didn't have any facial droop, nothing like that.
When I went in and told them that, I said, my wife's having a stroke, they rushed out there right then, and they got her, and we went back to this room right here, I believe, and they began to make contact with the med center, and the doctor got on the monitor, and he was directing folks here to, you know, exactly what to do.
Got him down to the hospital, and then called the Arkansas Saves thing on the computer, and there was a very kind doctor on the monitor who began to ask us questions, along with our doctor here. Dr. Bufford was working that day.
I couldn't tell what was going on. Doctors, nurses, and people going back and forth.
And finally, they got a doctor from UAMS on the television. He asked me some questions, and him and her talked back and forth. But when they were done, he told her, he said, "Christy, I think she is a candidate for that TPA shot." I had no clue what that was, had never even heard of it. But anyway, they told me the pros and cons of it, and I was shaking my head, yes, I want it.
And I asked him, I said, that was your mother or your wife, what would you do? He said, I'd give her that shot. So I said, care for the shot. And immediately, she started getting better.
I started to come to a little bit. They told me, you just had a stroke. We're going to give you this blood clot busting agent.
We have that medication available here at our small facility, and I'm grateful for that because I've used it firsthand on different, patients, and the outcome, sometimes you can see the symptoms starting to resolve before they leave the facility.
By the time I got here, she was already on with our saves, and I walked in, she still could not talk. And when I walked in, she started to cry. And I knew if she cried, I would cry, so I told her to straighten that out. I told her, I said, if I need to leave, I'll leave. I don't want to upset you. And so she put it back together, and they decided to do TPA, and just a couple of minutes after they pushed the TPA, she started talking to me again.
I don't know how long it was, but it just seemed like minutes to me. It seemed like my speech went to coming back, the feeling in my arm and hand began to come back.
The doctor and all the people were polite and perfect. I started talking, and as far as I was concerned, my stroke was over.
It's always great when we can see the improvement, especially immediate, but even long term. Going from not being able to talk to he's here telling his story and carrying on conversations is great.
So I actually come from a very, very rural critical access hospital in southeast Arkansas, and that was pretty much our only link to neurology was Arkansas Saves, and as a nurse we used it quite frequently. Anytime someone would come in, we didn't have anybody in-house, and again, that was my only access to a neurologist was Arkansas Saves, and it changed the way we treated strokes, because when I first started as a nurse many years ago, we didn't have Arkansas Saves, and it was just, we didn't know what to do. We did based on what we had, and the resources we had was not great.
Working in the emergency room environment, we don't always get to see the outcome. And so after he left that night and went to UAMS, I had no idea what the outcome was going to be. So to be able to have him sitting in front of me today is really a blessing.
I think it is very beneficial that we can do the telemedicine through AR Saves. I think it speeds the process up and helps get the care the patients need as fast as they can.
I remember when I first became a nurse, even probably when I was just a tech in the emergency room, a patient sticks out in my mind that came in with stroke-like symptoms that had resolved, so a TIA. At that time, we didn't always admit TIAs, mini strokes. That patient went home and came back a few days later and couldn't use one side of their body. And I love that we've changed that. We know now that you're at risk of having a huge stroke, And so we admit those patients to the hospital. We've just made huge strides in stroke care.
I'm an instructor, and we teach first responders, and we teach a lot of this area. And we always tell the people that we teach, we push the stroke to get education out about how stroke can be, you know, you can recognize it. And I never thought that this would be something that would help me. Nurses here are nurses that I am familiar with. It's home. This is my home hospital. This, you know, so it was fast. I couldn't believe how fast it was. So, and with stroke, knowing what I know about stroke, that was really important.
AR Saves, it's amazing. I think they should have it in every single hospital. I mean, it's why I'm here.
It just makes your heart so happy to think that what you did that day, or the education that you've provided, the resources that we have available, and especially through Arkansas Saves, that it saved her brain and saved her life, that she's able to go back to her daily life, that she's able to talk to her family, and it's just amazing.
This had a potential to ruin quite a bit of her life, and the fact that, you know, she's able to still do things, that's why we do this. I mean, that's completely 100% why we do this. And so it kind of gives me chills, and it's exciting.
Well, I know a lot of people don't come back from strokes that easily. I can say one thing: if you can survive, why moan about it? If you're a survivor of a stroke, don't mope about it. Push on for the ones who cannot overcome it. Be a light for them. And I'll be a light for the people who cannot stand up. That's why I'm standing here today.